Hello and welcome. My name is Gigi. I host this podcast called Hear Me Out, Just a Thought. I like to talk about faith, critical thinking, and really just everything wisdom. So if that sounds like something you would be interested in, do hit the subscribe button and we can stay connected. So today I want to talk about social media, protecting our peace, and the Christian life because I've heard this question as to are these things compatible? If so, why not? My answer is yes, they are perfectly compatible, but also maybe not for you and maybe not right now. I have my thoughts and my story, and I cannot wait to hear your take. So hear me out, it's just a thought. So, social media. I think it's part of everyone's life in 2024. And I do believe that folks who don't have social media or who don't spend time at all on social media are the lesser percentage of us, right? They could even be considered counterculture depending on their age and location. But most people most people I know, I think have at least one form of social media. And nowadays, of course, it has evolved from something that was to connect with people that we knew to now a way to follow things that we like. It has become even a way to get information. More and more people, even specifically youth, right? The younger generation, I feel like, is getting their information on social media more than with traditional ways or traditional communication platforms. And so this is so interesting because there is such an opportunity there for something great, but also there is space for something so dangerous because everything is on social media. It has become a marketing tool, of course, which it was to begin with, I think personally, but it has become a very powerful marketing tool and business tool for everyone from big corporations to Mr. and Mrs. everyone, really. And so there's good on social media, there is bad on social media, there's everything on social media. And so, as people who call ourselves Christians, for example, or even if you are not a Christian, but you just want to live a good life, live a wholesome life and a successful life, per se, I think you might be the kind of person, if you're listening to this type of podcast, who habitually examines yourself and your reflexes, your actual habits. I believe you might be the type of person who spends time analyzing what you do, on a repetitive frequency and what it brings to your life. I know I certainly am more and more. And so I do personally remember the first time I wondered about social media. I do remember the first time about 5-6 years ago where I asked myself, is what I'm doing good for me? Is what I am doing beneficial for me? Is the time that I am spending on social media good for me, right? Not good for others, good for me. And I remember later on when I came to faith and when I started just thinking about doing things for God or doing things that please God, the question became slowly, is what I'm doing pleasing God, good for me in terms of how God wants me to live? And so there was an evolution there. I believe most of us go through that evolution where we start thinking, in with our own self as reference. Just me, is it good for me? What do I want? What do I think? And then slowly we get to the point where we start wondering, what does God want? What does God see? What's God's way for my life? And so I think I was asking myself, okay, so is this social media conception in my life bringing me closer to God or further from God? And the thing is, as you grow in faith, of course, and I'm sure you've experienced this, and if you haven't, I'm sure it's to come for you, where now you get to a point where you know that God is good. Everything good comes from God. And so the further you go away from God, you know that you're going towards something bad, inherently bad, because goodness comes from God. And so to ask yourself the question, when I was asking myself the question, is this taking me closer to God or further from Him? It was also meant to be like, hey, is this taking me closer to something, to a good place to be in my life, or is this pulling me back? And in a previous episode, I remember talking about how I read a book that maybe you know very, very well. It's a very, famous book. It's called Atomic Habits. And I talked about how one example that I can think of after reading that book, I just noticed that Netflix specifically was not a good thing in my life, and I started seeing it differently. My TV consumption, my movie TV consumption was just a little high, and that paired with studying the Bible and just seeing things differently, I kind of started seeing Netflix not only as a time waster, but also as as something bad. Really, I just saw it differently, and I'll talk in the future on what I mean by that. But of course, Netflix is just one example. For you, it could be something completely different or something else. Far from me the idea of starting a whole journey of convincing you to get off of Netflix, but for me, that is what happened. And so some books just change your life, and that book, Atomic Habits, among others, did change mine. And of course, the Bible changed my life. This goes without saying, and it's not perfect, right? But I can think of a before and an after reading that book, for sure. So for me, platforms like Netflix specifically was an easy no, right? When I was thinking about, should I keep Netflix? Should I get rid of Netflix? That was an easy no for me. I don't even miss it, to be honest with you. That was not a struggle for me, but we are all different people, and some other things could be a struggle for me. Social media itself, posting on social media is not something that I do. I'm not really good at that. I don't, I know it's easier for some and harder for some. I'm not a posting type of thing, but I do consume, if I can say it like that, a lot of social media. So I was way back then, I was looking at entertainment pages and celebrity pages, and it wasn't too bad, right? But also nothing good was coming out of that. Nothing good was coming out of me looking at celebrities or knowing where they went or what they ate that day or who they're dating. So I was not on social media doing crazy things, but I was also not really spending quality time on social media. And so my thought that I want to share with you today is this. If you are wondering, is social media and protecting my peace and living a Christian life compatible? I do believe that it depends, right? It depends on what why, and who. It depends on what you actually look at or spend time doing on social media. It also depends on why you are on there. What's the purpose of you investing time to be on social media? But also, and most importantly, who you are, right? We'll often hear things like, here's what you should do with social media, here's what you shouldn't do. But I believe it depends on who you are. Meaning, if you are somebody who is easily addicted, right? You're that type of person that you get easily addicted to something when it feels good, maybe not, right? If you struggle with envy, for example, or lust, for example, you know that there's a lot of folks on the internet who just put their highlight reel, I think that's what they call it, the highlight reel of their life on the internet. And the best looking, richest, funniest people can be perceived there as just perfect by others. And so if you struggle with envy, that could be a hard time for you, or that could take you towards take you on a wrong path. If you struggle with lust, like I said, I personally know that half the things on social media that your eyes will see are naked people. I don't know why. It's like, well, I do know why. So the algorithm will do what it will do. But of course, if you are just learning this, half the things on social media are people who are naked or half naked, or things that will take you to people that are naked or half naked, because that draws the attention of the eye naturally. And so more eyeballs for more time on that type of content promotes it even further. And so if you struggle with envy or lust, that might not be for you. And of course, if you're insecure, if you're the type of person who does not feel confident in who they are, or feel like they're not enough, or need external validation, I do believe it might not be for you. And if you are that person, please go ahead and listen to, I did make an episode on finding your identity in God versus finding your identity in just the world, in culture. So I do believe that could be a good listen for you. But if you're one of those things, it might not be for you. But if you are the type of person who knows how to work your algorithm, if you know how to seek out, like intentionally seek out wholesome pages, and I do encourage people to follow pages and not other people per se. If you know how to seek out, inspirational stuff and life tip stuff, if you know who you are and you're not easily swayed by the new trends, the latest thing that's going on, if your personal life is in order, if your spiritual life is in order, then yeah, social media might be okay for you. Social media might be perfectly compatible with protecting your peace and living a Christian life. And I do believe that, if I do say so myself, it used to not be for me, but now it is. And so, of course, we have to always remember that it's easier and faster to go down a slippery slope, than up a very steep hill. It's easier to go down a slope than up a hill. And what I mean is that in today's world, it's so much easier and frequent, I guess, to get into bad stuff and fast and deep than to build good habits that stick. And so we can't play games with stuff like social media, just like any other drug. I would call it a drug. If you know you are vulnerable to anything I mentioned before, you have to kind of check yourself and decide that you will not use social media. But if to the contrary, you're the kind of person who's like, I get life from social media, I get so many ideas, I communicate with folks for things that are edifying and that even may be pleasing God, then it could absolutely be for you. And so I have decided that I will use social media for things that are productive. And even if they're entertainment only, I do believe that it is part and easy now for me to have entertainment that is still kind of sort of productive or makes me learn something, instead of mindlessly just scrolling. And I guess I have some tips. I'm welcome, I would welcome yours as well. I just don't want to be sharing what I think is good, but being alone here, I do believe most of you listening have fantastic ideas and tips and tricks. So, I just hurt myself. And so I believe, you have great ideas, and please feel free to share yours. But I think the few tips that I can give anyone who's wanting to protect their peace, who wants to stick to social media but also kind of live their Christian life, is to first and foremost be in your word, be in your Bible, spend time with God. This will always apply to everything I will ever say on this podcast, but you get a different pair of eyes when you spend time with God. You see things completely differently when you have His eyes, right? And so it's going to be easier to avoid certain things if you're filled with His Spirit, and you will be repulsed by some other things that are not useful or are an abomination for God, for example. So be in your word, spend time with God, spend time reading the Bible and understanding the world through God's eyes. I mentioned it before also, but follow pages if you can and not people. I've noticed that when you follow people, you get invested in their little things and you get curious, and we become this type of voyeur type of person, like, oh, I wonder who they're with, I wonder what they're eating, I wonder what they drive, blah blah blah. And we kind of train our minds to know everything about everyone. I personally think that is unhealthy. Let me know what you think, but I personally think that's unhealthy. And I'm kind of a fan of the time where if I didn't know what you had for lunch, it was okay. If we are not close enough to talk on the phone or for us to hang out in real life, I'm not sure I want to know, what you wore that day. So it's easy to get carried away by following people, but pages can be inspirational because you get to select what kind of pages you want to follow. Is it a page about the word? Is it a page about healthy eating? Is it a page about successful marriages? Is it a page about fitness, real fitness, not just Instagram fitness? Whatever it may be, I have found that it's better sometimes to follow pages and not people. You have to keep in mind also, or I guess I always keep in mind that I want to use social media for growth, right? If I spend 1 hour in my day on social media, I want to have grown or have something in my mind that I saw, that I read, that I heard, that helps me grow, and not just numbing my mind. And of course, we're all human beings. I'm not saying don't ever go scroll on Instagram or TikTok and have a good laugh for 15 minutes. That's not at all what I'm saying. We're not robots. But I am saying that if the biggest chunk of our time spent on social media is purely for entertainment, we can fall into relying on social media for entertainment, and that will never be a good thing. So for growth is good, right? And growth means something different for everybody. I'm sure you can think of what growth means to you, but just becoming a better person in general. And of course, to know ourselves, we have to know ourselves. We have to kind of think of what could be our blind sides, what could be the patterns that we have that are toxic, possibly. What is our story with things like lust and envy and insecurity and all of that, and what are our weaknesses, but also what are our strengths, right? Again, if you are the type of person that is listening to this podcast, I am so sure, I'm already sure, if you made it this far in the podcast, in this episode, that you're the type of person who looks to be better in life, who looks to grow. And so you might have strengths that, and I guess personal strategies in place for yourself that could be of good use in social media, on social media. You could be an entrepreneur, or you could be a storyteller, or you could be a kingdom worker that could use social media because you're just savvy, or you're not shy, you know how to communicate effectively, you can sell anything, whatever it is. Social media can be a good thing when you know how to exploit your strengths, for sure. So I guess what I was trying to say this whole time is that social media can be good to some people, or for some people. It can be a good tool to get where you want, and even do some kingdom work, like I call it, right? There are so many people that I see on YouTube, on Instagram, even on TikTok sometimes. Again, I'm not really that much on TikTok, but sometimes who do kingdom work, who spread the word, who encourage other people. And I think that's fantastic. So be encouraged yourself. I know I am. And we shouldn't be afraid to switch things up. We shouldn't be afraid to take a look at our social media usage and decide, you know what, I want to flip this up. I want to change, and I want to use it for good now. It's never ever too late. So like anything, social media is what you make of it. It's what you do with it that matters. I believe that's applicable to pretty much anything in life. So that's that. Let me know what you think. Do you struggle with social media? Have you struggled in the past? Or do you have strategies in place to live a peaceful life, to protect your peace and be a Christian person, although being on social media? Hit the subscribe button, guys. Hit the button for more episodes and the notification bell to know when something drops. In the meantime, I thank you for your time and your attention, and I will see you